Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. We're going to do a quick little sesh today because tomorrow I've got my free masterclass. So if you want to come spend some time with me, I'm going to be on for 90 minutes teaching tomorrow. And we are getting into essentially the art of unblocking your heart. And it's going to be 10 out of 10. I love doing these classes and being with y'all. And it's a really special way for me to connect with my community, to be in service, but also to give you some really juicy things to chew on and digest and work with so that you can weave these principles into real time. Because let's be so for real, learning this shit doesn't make a difference if you don't apply it. And oftentimes the application is where we get stuck, right? Because we can talk about things in theory, we can talk about ideas, but then when it comes to the practical application of it, our nervous systems freak the fuck out and we revert back to our old patterns and habits, which then just gets us more of what we've always had. So I like to give you some practical practices to start working with in these classes. And obviously, like, the bigger work happens in containers with me, and I will be talking about the one container that I do have open right now. So I'll be sharing a little bit more about that in tomorrow's class. So if you've been thinking about coming in and doing the work on a deeper level and having that support and that mentorship, I will be sharing a little bit more on that in tomorrow's class. And I hope that you join me because it's gonna be a blast. And there will be a replay. So if you can't be there live or if you can't be there for the whole time, there will be a replay for everyone who is registered. So head to the show notes, register yourself. And even if you're listening to this after the masterclass and you want to get in on it, I'll keep it open. I'll keep registration open for a little while after, and you can catch the replay. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about the heart and specifically closed hearts and why this is such a problem when it comes to what you truly desire and also what you need relationally. So when our hearts are closed and we are guarded and we are armored up, it really does impact what it is that we find desirable, what it is that we want. Usually when our hearts are closed, what we gravitate towards is a bit of a distortion on the desire. So there may be little flavorings of true desire in there, but what's really often coming through is more of the desires that are related to your survival. So when we are closed, fear is a very close companion, and our desires can morph and shift and change and get distorted by that fear and that closure. And this is why I am such a big advocate for the heart work and for the emotional work and the relational work, because when we start to de-armor the heart, when we start to clear that energetic and emotional congestion that is naturally there, that if we don't tend to, becomes the armor, becomes this like fortress around the heart that no one can get into and you can't get out of. So you're actually locked out of your own essence, your own heart, your own love. And that is really fucking tragic, but it's also really par for the course on this planet when we don't put a lot of focus and stock into doing this deeper emotional work and having the resources to process your feelings and understand your experiences and digest them and integrate them. And when we don't have those tools at our disposal, when we don't have those practices, when that modeling wasn't there for us, we just develop skills and adaptations that give us more of what we don't want. which is being locked out of our own heart, or having the things that we call in and manifest and create and generate, they're not quite it. You know, if you've ever had that feeling of like, okay, I thought this was the type of relationship I wanted, and then I got it, and it's not quite it. Chances are there's probably still a part of your heart or parts of your heart that you are unavailable to, that are still closed, that there are parts where there's still congestion happening. And that distortion of the heart field is going to impact what you think that you want. And I see this all the time. I've seen this in my private practice I've been doing this for 17 years now. And I've also seen it in my own life, been on the receiving end of it, but I've also been the one doing it. So I've got a lot of data here to play with, but in relationships where this kind of pops up is when you first meet someone and the heart opens. So we see this beautiful thing happen between two people. There's this opening, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of possibility, there's just this free flow of energy and love that happens when you meet someone and there's a click and there's a zing, right? And so you feel this beautiful, beautiful opening in your heart. And then what happens is that the body clocks that. And if being open at any point in your history has meant or led to you being humiliated, embarrassed, brokenhearted, experiencing excruciating emotional pain, as soon as your nervous system clocks how open you are, it sends a signal, a distress signal. And it's like, fuck, shut that down. Because that level of openness leads to fill in the blank. And so this is all automated. This is not conscious. This is going on beneath your conscious awareness. And then what happens is there is a closure, often a very sharp closure. And this is where people get really fucked up in relationships, because it goes from being like this very open, connectable, free-flowing, there's love and we're creating and there's possibility and we're leaning into this thing, and then boom, cold as ice. Pull back, retreat, close off. They numb out. All of a sudden, that warmth that was there, that free flow, that openness is no longer there. And all it takes is whoever has the more sensitive system in terms of this kind of wire trip, whoever's wires get tripped first is the one who's going to activate the sequence. And if we don't work on our heart, if we do not work on this emotional and relational spot within ourselves, we run a very high risk of reacting to their closure with our own closure. And then once two hearts are closed, all of a sudden it distorts the field of the relationship. And we go into protection mode. We go into defensive mode. They're no longer our ally. They're no longer, someone we can trust. All of a sudden, they're now the enemy. All of a sudden, now we need to get as far away from them as possible. And that happens a lot in relationships. And all that is oftentimes is this tripwire has gotten hit. And the more that you do the unglamorous work of going into the heart and clearing out that emotional and energetic debris that's contributing to not only the tripwire, but also any of those blocks or barricades that might be there to begin with. And when we start clearing that, when we start working with it, when we start integrating it and digesting it, all of a sudden we now expand our capacity to stay in that field of openness, and also not get blown out and victimized and spun out when somebody else's tripwire happens and they close and it changes the trajectory of your relationship with them. This is how I can always tell where someone's actually at. Because a lot of people like to think that they are open, that they're emotionally available, that they're open, they're available, they're receptive. And that's probably true to a degree. But where we really see someone's openness is when they don't get what they want. Can they keep their heart open even when the other person closes? And that doesn't mean you stay in a dynamic and you have like this big bleeding heart and you just give and give and give, and you hope one day that that is going to like change their mind. Oh my gosh, did you hear that honk outside? That was the universe being like, pay attention. You're not meant to do that. You are not meant to overextend and bleed yourself dry in hopes that that will be the thing that shows them just how safe it is to open to love. Because no matter what you do, it's not going to change their internal orientation. Their internal orientation changes when they choose to do that de-armoring work themselves. It can't be forced from the outside. Like a heart cannot be opened from the outside. Hearts can only be opened from the inside out. And that's what we get wrong a lot of the time when it comes to love and relationships. Is we think, oh, because I have this very open, bleeding heart, that will be the thing that inspires them to open their heart. But it isn't. That's not how the sequence works. And so what ends up happening is when that strategy of overextending doesn't work, then it hits your tripwire and then your closure happens. And this is where we see things get really messy, right? Because people are hurt. They're embarrassed. They're hurt. And they don't want to feel the humiliation. They don't want to feel the hurt. They don't want to feel the embarrassment. And so they close and armor up and then go on a fucking rampage. This is where you see people dragging each other on social media, talking shit, or maybe there's an explosive exchange between the two people. Whatever it is, it's a more armored perspective, an armored approach. And when you go in closed, all you can ever get is more closedness. And when you go in open, you go in honest, which is, you know, if the other person has closed after this experience of opening, you actually reveal the impact of their closure, and then you adjust your access. So it's this process of being really open and vulnerable and honest and transparent, revealing the truth, because the thing is, people, when we choose to transform from the inside out and start jailbreaking our own heart, that usually comes because someone has loved us enough to tell us the truth. Someone has loved us enough to reveal the impact of our closure on them. And what it does is it kind of plants a seed inside of us. And sometimes that can take years or decades for it to sprout and for us to start doing that opening and de-armoring work. But inevitably it does plant a seed. And when enough seeds get planted, all of a sudden the desire to open and explore this terrain comes from the inside out. This is largely how my process of coming to life with an open heart has been. I had a very closed heart for a very long time. Lots of protection, lots of armor. There was just a lot of energetic and emotional debris that had never been properly digested. And the opening happened actually not even in a romantic relationship. It happened with one of my friend's sisters. who called me out for my lack of integrity. And the way she did it was so masterful. She didn't shame me. She didn't attack me. She went in and she revealed how my lack of integrity, like not doing what I said I was going to do and being where I said I was going to be when I said I was going to be there, how that actually had impacted her and the impact that it had on her community, because I was supposed to be somewhere in community with her and I didn't show up and I didn't communicate that I wasn't coming. And the way that she handled that, it was so different to how obviously things in my past had been handled, because things in my past would have been handled with a lot of shame, a lot of punishment, a lot of closure, and that pain of being like cut off and like love withheld and people going ice cold. Like that's one of the most sensitive and tender spots for me, especially in conflict, is when someone shuts down and goes ice cold, because it is such a replay of my childhood and experiences that were really fucking painful, and where I had to traverse those experiences alone. And I often do not want to go back to feeling that way. But ironically, in relationship, we do manifest and bring in the type of people who will have a similar flavoring to these spots from our past. And that happens so that we actually can activate all the material that actually isn't digested. Just because you're not giving it attention doesn't mean that it's digested and integrated. It just means that it's sitting in your system waiting to get triggered and tripped up. And so when these experiences happen and something gets rumbled or jumbled, but also you get this new disconfirming experience of how it's handled in real time, like what happened with my friend's sister, it planted a seed. And I got the impact of my actions. And to be honest, I'd probably never even considered the impact of my actions before, because before that point, everything was always coming from a lens of such shame and punishment and isolation that why would I ever consider the impact of my actions? Because there wasn't an environment that was conducive to that type of inquiry. And she created an environment that was conducive to that inquiry, and it allowed me to go inward and inquire and be like, what is going on with me? Is that really who I want to be in the world? Is that the impact that I really want to be having on people? Is that like the legacy I want to leave relationally? Is just like tromping over people's hearts and not giving a shit about how my behavior impacts them? No, it's not who I want to be. And that was one of the really big moments in my journey that put me on a whole new trajectory. And it sent me in the direction of learning how to be in right relationship with my integrity, how to communicate better, because I hadn't received those skills either. And as I did that layer by layer, I started to unburden my heart. There was a little bit more room for more love. And then leaning into romantic relationships became a little bit easier, because I was very guarded, very closed. I always needed to be in the one-up position in relationships. And I often would choose people who I knew weren't quite it, because if it didn't work out, it wouldn't really hurt me. And I would choose people who just did not have the ability to destroy me, because I think on some level I knew that I did not have the capacity to deal with that type of loss, because I had so much undigested emotional debris around my heart. And as I, went through my relational journey in my 20s and 30s, I started to really look at that and look at that pattern of, why am I choosing people that essentially I'm not really afraid to lose. At that point, it was very obvious that I was not playing to win in love. I was just playing not to lose. And that's probably a podcast for a whole other day, but it's not a very empowering position. It's definitely not a creative or generative position. And that also had me pivot towards, let me be more intentional with how I'm relating. And what would it be like to choose someone who did have the power to destroy me, because I was going in so open? And if I went in open, what would happen? And I'm going to tell you, it was a masterclass in seeing that my understanding of open and being truly open were two different things, because I did go in as open as I possibly could have been in that relationship. And him destroying me is not really the right language for it, but like, the English language is so limited sometimes. And there were parts of me that did get destroyed in that relationship. If I wasn't on this path, it would have fucked me up so bad. It really would have. Because going into a relationship, the first one where I'm like, okay, I'm going to really be open, and I'm really going to let him see my heart, and I'm really going to let him love me, and I'm going to love him. And I'm going to be open in that. And then that was the relationship that, he cheated multiple times. And every time he did, it was like a dagger to the heart. And the lack of integrity, the lack of honesty, it was a very hard thing to digest, because I could feel that part that was really, honestly, justified in closing. And I could feel it battling with the truer part of me that wanted to stay open, and knew that it was my work to stay open. It wasn't my work to stay with him. It was my work to stay open to the sensations, to the emotions that relationship churned up in me. Because those were the same sensations and same emotions that I had buried decades before. And I did not have an access point to getting to them. So a lot of the times our relationships, especially when we step on the conscious path of doing this work, there will be a phase of time where the relationships seem a bit chaotic, or they seem a bit traumatic, and maybe they are. And what's happening there is those are players that are coming in to play a particular role for you, to help you access something that you would not have been able to access otherwise, that is related to your past, that is related to an experience that you had that you couldn't digest fully. And when the mirroring moments happen, the temptation is to close even tighter. And if you close even tighter, you're going to require even bigger of a situation to kind of make that material more malleable. So this is why people keep attracting the same shit different person. And it gets arguably more and more intense every single time. Because there is a part of them that they are not available to, that these relationships bring them to. And it starts to open, and they don't have the internal infrastructure or the external support to know what's happening and navigate that terrain. And so they close and they tighten. They put more armor around the wound, but they never actually heal the wound. They never actually release the energy that's stuck. And when we start doing that work, and we start releasing, and that was one of the greatest gifts of that relationship for me, was that it gave me this access point to releasing so much of that pain, energy, debris, weight, density that was barricading my heart. And it gave me an access point to go in and get intimate with it so that I could finally face it and digest it and integrate it. And it was in the integration of it that my capacity to remain open started to expand. And that has been the process over the last, that relationship began in 2012. So that process has been running for me since 2012. And it's been this continual, and it still works me sometimes, because there will be experiences or dynamics or relationships that I have that have still a bit of that flavor. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I know what this means now. I know it means that there's, more material in there that just needs to be pressure washed and cleaned out. It's literally like cleaning out a wound. We wouldn't get mad at a gushing wound on your hand and being like, oh, I'm so fucking pissed that I have to clean that out again. No, we're like, oh, if I don't clean that out, it's going to get infected. And if it gets infected, that's going to be a much bigger problem. And that's what happens with our hearts. Because we don't clean them out, the infection or the block becomes a pretty big problem. And one of the biggest things that I see with closed hearts is that it is very hard to create powerfully and to create in a way that is sustainable and is congruent with what you truly desire if your heart is closed. It's very difficult to do that. What closed hearts create is, just on the trajectory of what their survival parts want, not the truth of them. So like going back to the beginning today of like, when we have an open heart, we are able to connect to the truth of our desire and what we are here for and what we are here to create and what we are here to experience. And the more we clear the heart of that debris, the easier it is to back our true desire. So in a relational example, like you get really clear on what you truly want and you're able to say it with your full chest. And you understand that in the revealing of the true desire, it will act as a filtration system. The people who are incongruent with that desire will be filtered out. And then the people who are congruent with that desire, they remain. And it becomes this very interesting exploration of, I'm not attached to the timeline of it, but I know this is the true thing. I am backing it with my whole heart. And I trust that that's going to come in when it's true. And I'm not going to get fucked up. I'm not going to have a little hissy fit. I am not going to be victimized by my desire not coming to fruition on my egoic timeline. Instead, I'm going to open and trust that, when I'm dealing with true desire, I don't want someone in there who is kind of what I want, because that's just going to create more interference. I I'd rather wait for someone who is actually aligned with what it is that I truly desire. And in the meantime, I'm going to create. I'm going to create my life. I'm going to create my art. I'm going to go into the world and use my open heart to weave energy, experiences, creations, art, teachings that are congruent with the type of world that I want to live in. Because again, if your heart is closed, you run a risk of creating more of what you don't want to see in the world. You run a very high risk of becoming the thing that you rally against. And that is a very hard pill for people to swallow. But that is how a closed heart works. That is how the shadow works. So if we leave that untouched, if we don't go into it, if we don't transform it, if we don't open it, if we don't clear it, that's what we're going to get. And personally, I don't think that that is a good use of my life. I think it is a very good use of my life to open my heart, to leave people better off for having had an interaction with me, to be on the ground in my community, to really prioritize the health and vitality of my relational world, to create things that plant seeds, that allow other people to unlock their hearts and to create the things that they are here to create, to be a stand for true love, to be a stand for healthy relationships, to be a stand for leaving this conventional path and choosing an unconventional one that is congruent with your soul and what your soul came here to experience inside of your human. That to me is a much better use of my time, of my energy, of my devotion, and it keeps me busy. You know, I don't feel like there's something missing because that partner hasn't come into my life yet. I know that when it's meant to happen, it's going to happen. And in the meantime, I got shit to do. I have things to create. I have feelings to feel. I have more layers to take off. I have more experiences to digest. And when that becomes the focus and I'm able to play with the expansion of my open heart day to day to day to day, and my heart's open and I'm grounded in myself, that's actually what is creating this new frequency of transformation and change in the world. And the more people who do that, instead of losing your shit and spinning out, because that is how the world is currently constructed. It's constructed to emotionally hijack you, spin you out, so that you stay disconnected from your heart. Your heart stays closed and barricaded, and what you can create from that position isn't really going to challenge these systems that are so problematic. And so it's literally how the system is set up. It's set up in a way that self-preservizes. That's not a word. Self-preservation. But it does. It's set up that way. It's set up to keep itself running by keeping you out of your heart, out of your body, disconnected, barricaded. So if you really want to stand for the revolution, stand for it by opening your heart. Because I'll tell you one thing, people with open hearts do not shoot other people. They just don't. But you got to have a pretty closed heart to be able to look someone in the eye and see their humanity and want to take that from them. And the more regulated we are in our body, because again, being that frantic, off the rails, hysterical, kind of drunk energy is not going to inspire change either. That actually just creates more of the chaos. But when we come at it from a open heart, very landed in our body, there is a unfuckable with power that starts to move through you. And your field of what you see is no longer distorted. So your field of what you're perceiving reality to be changes, and you can see through the fog. You can see all of these mechanisms at play. And you're like, I'm not getting hooked by that shit. Instead, I am going to go and be of service in my community. I'm going to go and meet my fucking neighbor and build connection. The world is starving for connection, and everyone is waiting for somebody else to go first. And that's not how we're going to get there. We're going to get there by going into the terrain of our heart, clearing it out so that we can activate that courage and that bravery and that intentionality to go out and be heart connected to the people in our communities, to the people, in other places around the world, and really start to create infrastructure and create new possibilities of how we can relate with each other and how we can live with each other and how we can coexist with each other that really honor our humanity and honor our hearts and allow us to be in a more generative, creation-based, possibility-placed world. That's really, like, when you boil it down, why I do what I do is because I really do give a fuck about what happens on this planet. I really care about people. But I also know a lot of, like, what people plug into doesn't move the needle forward. And if it did, the needle would be moving forward. And it's not. And so we have to approach things different. And if you are someone who considers yourself a warrior of the heart, which you probably are if you've listened to this rant from to this point, then you are here to literally usher in a new frequency, a new energetic, a new way of being, a new infrastructure onto this planet. And this is going to be a work in progress for a long time, but if we don't start, it never happens. So we have to start in our generation. We have to start with our life. And the best place to start is your own heart. Because until you clear the debris of your own heart, you aren't seeing things clearly. Which means there's a high probability that you're reacting from a place of fear, scarcity, lack, limitation, being emotionally hijacked. You're not acting from a place of true spiritual and human sovereignty. And you got to be in that space of anchored sovereignty to really weave in and bring in change and create things that move the needle forward. So I really do hope that you come join me tomorrow, because we are going to get into this even more. And obviously the program Initiated that I offer, that is where we do this big de-armoring. This is where we do the big work. And if you feel that call, if you're like, yes, I know I'm here for not only great love, but I'm also here for something bigger than that too. I know that my life is meant to mean something more. I'm here to create something that moves the needle forward. Then we start with the foundational work so that your system can hold what it is that you are meant to bring through. So head to the show notes, sign yourself up for tomorrow's masterclass. It is going to be a fucking vibe. And if you already feel the call for Initiated, I will put the link in the show notes as well, and you can send me your application for it. I would love to read it and love to meet you, and then we'll talk and see if that is a true fit for you, or if there is something else that would be a better fit for you, because I'm really in the business of serving what's true. And if that program is not the true fit, if there's something else that I offer, or if there is someone else that I think is a better fit for you, that's what I'm going to do. And it's definitely a very different paradigm of business, but it's the thing that feels most integrity to me, because I want to do this work with women who feel called and who are really open and receptive and ready to journey into the terrain of their heart, journey into the foundations of relational mastery, so that not only all of the relationships in their life become these powerful vortexes for transformation, but they also can foster and really bring through the thing that they are here to contribute to the world. So if that's you, I can't wait to meet you. And I'll be seeing the rest of you tomorrow. Bye, friends.